very interesting roundtable, which I'm sure you will enjoy as much as I look forward to enjoying. My name is Akhilesh. I'm partner with KPMG. I do many things which I don't talk about because KPMG wants me to talk about things which I don't do. So today I'm trying to coordinate a conversation amongst several of you who come from highly accomplished backgrounds of what you achieved yourself, and they chose me as a moderator. And the reason they chose me as a moderator because the moderator is a person who just acts like a traffic light signal. His only job is to say we've got 14, 15 thought leaders in the room, and if we only had 60 minutes, we will only be able to hear 2. So if you want to hear all 15 people, bring in a traffic light, and I'm a traffic light. And why am I chosen as a traffic light? Because I've got nothing to lose. All right. So if I upset you, too bad. Nilesh has outsourced his trouble to me, saying that I will talk about all the good things and you do the bad guys. So hopefully that works that way. Without getting into much of it, I'll just start with a little bit of frame. But before that, I would like all of us to briefly introduce ourselves, even though the name tags exist. But it'll be a good idea to kind of hear what you do. But before that, let me tell you why am I in this room, even though I don't live in Bangalore. For that, let me tell you a story. How many of you have heard the story as to how Karnataka got its name? You heard this story?
I know why it is named Karnataka. How it got it.
Okay. So why is it?
Karnataka is an elevated land.
Okay.
That's what is the name.
Okay.
That's how it's it's elevated land.
All right. Okay. Must be right, but I will tell you the consultant's version. Okay. So the consultant's version is that I'm sure all of you are familiar with Mahabharata. So in Mahabharata, the 2 people who were very fiercely competitive was Arjun and Karna. They were 2, and both trained, one like a prince, another like a driver's son, and all of that. And somewhere their teacher knew that Karna is kind of a little bit better, but he was given less power and some limitation. So one day, Karna told Guru Dronacharya, he says, I pledge that before the sun sets, I'm going to defeat Arjuna. And Dronacharya says, don't get into this trouble, it's not worth it. He says, no, I'm going to prove that I'm better than everybody else. So at that point in time, they were somewhere in Karnataka, okay, maybe close to Bangalore. And when the whole challenge started, Karn realized that he could almost see where Arjuna is. So we could say that Karn was somewhere where there's a Silk Road junction, and Arjuna was at HSR layout. And he says, I can actually just run and do it, but he says, I need to carry my chariot. So Shalya, who's this driver, he says, Shalya, let's go and hit Arjuna today. And Shalya says, it's not a good time today. Too much traffic. So he says, no, I have taken this pledge. Before the sun sets, I must defeat Arjuna. So Shalya, despite trying hard to cancel an Uber trip, he says, okay, let me try. And he starts. And almost like 30 minutes, he's not moving. And Karna says, what's going on? He says, too much traffic. It's peak time. I told you not to come here right now in Bangalore. So he says, okay, let's try to take another route. He says, no other route is possible right now because now we are in the middle of something. Long story short, Karna tries for almost like 4 or 5 hours to go from one point to another. And finally, when he tries very hard, his wheel actually gets stuck in a pothole. And then he says, Shalya, can you drive faster? He says, if I drive faster, the wheel will go even further down. So he says, no, don't worry, you drive faster. So he asks him to accelerate. And the wheel goes down. And finally, the sun sets. And Karna loses this thing. So he says, I tried very hard, not because of my capability, but because of these land's potholes. My wheel, which is Karna's wheel, is atkad in this land. So because Karna ka wheel atka, he said that this place is cursed, that जो भी कोई आदमी यहाँ से जाएगा उसका wheel यहाँ पे अटकेगा, and that's the reason Karnataka is called Karan Atka. All right, sorry, fun thing, so that at least you guys give me some credibility. So we are all cursed. So I live in Delhi, a nice place where I can drive. I can reach from my home to office, which is 9 kilometers in 11 minutes. I'm proud of it. I can make from home to airport, which is about 17 kilometers in about 21 minutes. I'm here. Took me like more like 45 minutes to come 4 kilometers. So
Subject to rains.
fun aside, but I can tell you the conversation which you have today is so interesting. And when I was talking to Nilesh to figure out saying, how do we make sure that it's the best use of everybody's time? So I've tried to put together some points. And once again, thank you, ETH, and thank you, Ascendas, for bringing us all together. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it. So before I go into a bit of context setting, what might be helpful is that if I go around the room and ask each one of you in a very, very short, maybe 2 or 3 lines, introduce yourself. But more importantly, in one line, if you could tell me what would be your desired outcome from this hour which we have today. So maybe, Vijay, if I could request you to go first.
Ladies first, I thought so.
Oh, okay, we could go with Namrata.
Sure. Hi everyone, I am Namrata Kher. I am from Ascendas Firstspace. I take care of business development for them for India. What I am looking here, because there are varied of industries here, and it would be very good to look at that how everybody growth and how these industries can come together as at the same time how different they are. So that's what I am here to look at.
Thank you, Namrata. Sandeep?
Hey, good evening. I think we met most of you in the chat session, but yeah, my name is Sandeep, and I take care of OT supply chain for Asia Pacific. Along with, I take care of global electronics for us. So for me, I think India is a market which I always aspire that could be in a global scale. I think I keep looking at the partnerships in India which can drive us to the next level of business. I think I met a lot of teams here, I think, which I feel more confident that India can be placed on a global scale. I think learning more with the team here and trying to understand what best we can do to deliver on a global scale, because I think it's time for India to be on a global scale, because I feel it's our turn now. So
Thank you. So global scale is what I'm hearing from you. How do we scale globally? Okay.
absolutely.
Can I call you? How do I introduce? How do you pronounce your name?
Yeah, Ullal is easier.
Ulal.
Subramanya would be difficult,
Yes.
at least for some people.
Yeah, I hear so many variations of this. So, yes.
Yeah. So, good evening. I am Subramanya Ullal. I am on the board of Sasmos HET Technologies as a director. I was the CEO prior to this for about 6 years. Before that, I have worked in Bosch for about 27 years, and I also worked in UK hydraulics company for about 4 years as CEO. So what do I look forward to today? We have discussed this topic in different contexts. I would love to listen to some new thoughts today from so many people who are here. Something new which we haven't discussed earlier.
Something new. Lovely. Thank you.
Good evening all, my name is Nandini.
Yes.
I run an electronics manufacturing unit in Bangalore, Electronic City. So what I would like to have as the takeaway is that I want to express that today India should not be looked down as a place where we get manufacturing done at a cheaper cost. It's not the only reason for the global players to come to India. We're equally sound and good enough in our engineering techniques also. So if engineering is merged with the manufacturing which we make, we are sure to lead. So that's what we have to tell all our teams.
Thank you. Position India as not a low-cost destination, but high-value engineering
Not
destination.
only as a low cost.
Yeah. Thank you. Prashant?
Hi, good evening. My name is Prashant, working with Sasmos HET Technologies for last 3 years as a vice president and head of the business unit. Before this, I was with GE Aviation, supply chain leader for Asia Pacific and Europe region, and before that with Honeywell. So last 18 years into aerospace and defense. Worked in quality engineering, supply chain, and now heading the business unit. So what I'm looking for from this forum is, if you see last 5 years growth of aerospace and defense industry in India, every company is growing at the CAGR of like 25 to 35%. So customer demand and the overall India consumption, both commercial as well as defense, has a huge potential. But till date, we are dependent on the foreign companies' imports on the supply chain side for almost 98% of the volume. Now, I do understand that consumer electronics, automotive, and industrial has done much better compared to aerospace and defense. It has its own challenges, but I would like to gather more information and gather some ideas in terms of how do we take some learning from that, because in aerospace industry, frankly speaking, there are regulatory requirements. There are a lot of restrictions. We say like in aerospace industry only aeroplane goes fast. All other things has its own constraint. So I want to take some learning from the other industry experts and see how we can adopt that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. This is Sitaram. I head the operations for the consumer electronics business for Harman International. Most probably you'll know the brand name of JBL. Have been in supply chain, customer experience, manufacturing operations for the last 26 years with multiple industries, multiple MNCs. Here in Harman, globally we are very strong in terms of electronics manufacturing. We're trying to scale that as a manufacturing hub in India. So that's my current focus area because we are the only brand, international brand, who's trying to manufacture in India in our category. Right? There's no one else. So we are trying to establish not just for India region, but as an export market as well, right, from here. A lot of challenges. So trying to understand what are we ready, right, and is the India market completely ready for the future of manufacturing, right, in terms of the electronics and the quality level which other countries are doing, right, and do we have the kind of vendors who can match with that scale and the quality.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So is India ready for the global competitive manufacturing?
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Arshi Krishnachar. I represent a company called Seoul Semiconductor. I'm into the up-to semiconductor compound phosphorus. Previous to this, I worked in Philips. Previous to this, I was in GE. I don't know why I have been invited here, but nevertheless, since I have been invited, what do I expect from here is, if at all we set up the manufacturing facility in India, which is going to be the ISM 2.0, which is going to roll out in next month, and we are keen to have a joint partnership, and I'm driving that entire project. I'm also looking at the ecosystem. If that happens after China, which is the one, the India, then after in India, which is the one, I belong to Bangalore. Maybe Bangalore is the first choice. I also live in Delhi, like 10 days in Bangalore, 10 days in Delhi, 10 days in Korea. That's how it's happening now. So exciting times for India, despite the global turmoil and all that. So in terms of expectations, the ecosystem for a semiconductor facility in India, and this up-to semiconductors over a period of time may also replace the silicon semiconductor, things like that. As the discussion takes up, let me throw some light.
Oh, that's a good. You're saying why are you here? I think you are very relevant into this conversation. Just as a side note, I have played a part in contributing to ISM 2.0 thinking.
Yeah.
So happy to kind of share as I go along, saying where do we see the future, as much as I'm sure it'll get unveiled in a bigger way, but happy to share some thoughts and will be relevant for manufacturing at a competitive, high quality and all of that.
And KPMG is also our global consultant.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sure you got good things to talk about us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shyam Karigiri, and I head the India operations of a multinational company called Moog, primarily into aerospace, industrial, and space and defense. On the aerospace side, the company typically does systems for the flight control systems. So we talk a lot about make in India, make for India. But from an aerospace perspective, just similar to what Prashant was mentioning, I think there seems to be still a lot of gap in terms of capabilities and also that overall ecosystem in terms of, again, being able to do more within India from an aerospace perspective manufacturing. So perhaps some of these discussions would have some takeaways for me, and at the same time, if there is anything that I can contribute, that would be my intention for this evening. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you.
Hello everyone, myself Avnish. I'm from Molex. I'm heading supply chain here. Molex is into connector and wiring harness business, and Molex is part of Core Group. And in Molex, we are targeting India as now preferred manufacturing hub with a higher volume, not on the cost, and better quality. As you were mentioning, similar thing. And I want to understand from this conversation, like other industry, what they are doing for this, and as well what we are doing, we can share the thoughts.
Perfect. Would love to hear some of that. Thank you so much.
I'm Sain. I'm CEO of BSA in India. And it's an Italian company and we make machines for various material. I also head the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce in the southern region. What I really share with Nandini was saying is, okay, even earlier experiences that have been there as head of the business units, I always started where people said this is not possible to do in India. We don't want this in India. But what ultimately my personal experience has been that we came out with very flying colors. Also in the existing company, we do 80% we export to 80 countries globally, a product that is entirely designed and made in India. And today in our board in Italy, they talk about it's no more a question of what we should do in India, it's a question of what we should do in Italy. So that's it. And of course, always has been the uncertainty. So we always talk about a lot of localization to be done. Machine, when we build machine, it's lot of electronics going into it. I would like to more and more understand about in this part how much we are advancing in India. So every 6 months I see there is a big change, and there is too much of electronics and communication IoT that is coming into the machine building. I think for building future factories it will be a big change.
Perfect. Thank you. Sachin.
Hello, good evening. I am Sachin. I represent AkzoNobel. It's a paints and coatings company. I head the Center of Excellence for Supply Chain for them. Previously into supply chain roles with Amazon and Accenture. My purpose over here is to understand how we can develop a ecosystem where India can take that giant leap towards Vikasit Bharat, so that we all come together, develop an ecosystem where we all can potentially evaluate having an ecosystem of working towards and taking India take that giant leap.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you.
Good evening all. My name is Ramu. I'm CEO of Leica Wireless. We're a 15-year-old company with a vision to build indigenous networks. Today, we have network products, which is powered by our technology what we have developed over years. And manufacturing is always like a subject which is a lot of internal debate. Why? Because we are in a segment where the competition is extremely high. And always when it comes to manufacturing, we are compared with China. And we started off our journey with providing products to some of the industries or the defense where we are not questioned against the manufacturing capability in China, right? Because these are some industry where they're not worried about the costs that are coming out of China as a benchmark. But as we grow as a company today, the challenge what we have is, can I make the same product at the same price, or why there is a gap? Is it supply chain? Is it automation in the manufacturing? These are subjects which we continuously debate internally. How do I match the cost of the product? Because when we say that India, the labor cost is not too off. I see many times the cost of the products are much lower when it is manufactured in the US or Europe than India. So this is a subject which is always I'm curious about.
Very interesting.
And there are some things as a design-driven company, like we have been continuously working, but again we are dependent on the ecosystem. So this conversation I would like to see what are the similar problems, because manufacturing is a subject not specific to only electronics. It is there for everybody. I would like to learn and understand how the challenges are addressed by various industry and industry leaders, and that will be my carry away from this.
Thank you. Very clear. Thank you. Vijay.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies, of course. I'm Vijay, founder CEO of Sensemi Technologies. I'm part of ISM 1.0. I'm one of the DLI winners from the Government of India. And we are developing next generation AI chip, primarily meant for IoT devices and primarily, edge AI. We also have wireless capabilities onto the same chip. So that's where I would like to say, Arshi, that why we are here is that we want to make it felt for the world that India is growing. India has started growing in terms of semiconductors. Until now, we've been importing 100% of our chips. We have started off 2 years back as DLI 1.0, meant for start building that ecosystem which comes the basic in terms of electronics, right? And that's where I would say that I would like to tell everybody, Otis, Nandini, and definitely Lekha, that we can start from here, from India.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you so much. Last but not the least, as every consultant has a wild card up in his sleeve, all the great questions, suggestion, all of these things which will come. So I'll try and answer, but when I don't, I'll turn to Nilesh. So Nilesh, quickly introduce yourself and how can we learn from some of your experiences.
Sure. Hi everyone, this is Nilesh. I handle the India business for Ascendas Firstspace. We are necessarily one of the largest private equity players listed out of Singapore, and we are in the business of creating infrastructure. The reason why I'm here, and I would like to thank each one of you to make time for this evening, because this is really very precious to us. I'm here to understand, take the voice of the industry, and hear what's the ask. I've already, one thing which is common across is that all of us want to make India the next global manufacturing hub. So it's very heartening to hear that voice. Two things which are critical to that dream and to that aspiration is building the right infrastructure, and then to facilitate the kind of capital that is required to build that infra. So once we hear from you, that is what we would like to bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nilesh. So let me just try and bring all of these. I took notes of who's saying what in terms of, more importantly, what's the value? Because as a consultant, I always challenge myself, am I delivering ROI for your time? Because you might just say, I came here, wasted an hour of my time, nothing happened. So I'll try and make sure that I deliver most of what you discussed. So a few things. You already covered one topic, that every one of you believe that India has an opportunity to become bigger, better than where we are, and also become a global player, competitive, high quality. Three of you mentioned ecosystem. I think that resonated quite a lot with me, because it's not about one company. It's not about random things. It's about creating ecosystems. And there are great examples of countries around the world. So Korea, for example, has built some amazing ecosystems. Taiwan, again supported by government, has built amazing ecosystems. So I think the ecosystem have a disproportionately high capability compared to individual random set of companies. Before I go into where I want, so I will frame this next, whatever we got left, maybe about 40 minutes, into 3 segments. So therefore, we may not have the opportunity to hear everybody on all of these 3 segments. I'll talk about the 3 segments being, first is, what do we need to do for India to become a better destination? Which in turn could mean, how do we build high quality manufacturing, high competitiveness manufacturing? What is stopping us from doing that today, and how some of you are overcoming those barriers? So the first segment will be about saying, how do we make the situation where we are right now as a great opportunity into a great outcome, and what each of you are doing in your own world. The second thing, the segment which I would like to talk about is, what are some of those challenges which you face in that journey, and is there a way for us to collectively think about how do we deal with those? And then the third one largely is solving, at least for the infra, as a big topic. So those are the three segments. I'll go and I'll try and keep time so that if we run out of time on one segment, I'll stop and then we'll move on to another one. But before I go further, I will tell you one story, not like the Karnataka story, which is completely fictitious. I will tell you now the real story, fact-based. This is the story of General Motors in 1980s. And in 1980s, General Motors started to face a major competitiveness challenge from Japanese automakers. So they saw Toyota coming into the US. Toyota was creating cheaper cars than what GM was selling at that point. GM was a market leader. Toyota was hitting their margins, their market share. So at that point in time, GM held a very significant strategic discussion to say, what do we need to do? And they said that we need to build the GM of the future. And one of the things in that, they said that we need to build a smart factory. It was called the light out factory. And the GM said that to build that light out factory, we almost need a town. Okay, so they got a neighborhood in Detroit, actually relocated a large number of residents, paid them a fair bit of money. In fact, there was a bit of government support in that. And they built a world-class lights out factory in that place, taking on Toyota and Nissan, which was coming at that point in time. Long story short, they built huge infrastructure, huge real estate, huge smart factory, and of course, few things went wrong with that. One of them was also the robotics at that point in time wasn't as advanced, and they realized that the robots were painting each other rather than painting cars. But long story short, that was one of the worst mistake GM made in its history. And few years down the line, the CFO came publicly to say that the amount of money which was, by the way, after the whole factory was set up and then operation, etc., the market share was lower than the market share of the Japanese car makers at that point in time. So instead of gaining market share, they lost market share. And the CFO at that point in time came public, said that, if we were to spend all that money which was spent on building this smart factory, we could have bought Toyota and Nissan completely. The cost of that factory in today's NPV is about $90 billion. And at that point in time, it would have costed only $35 billion to buy both Nissan and Toyota put together. So instead of fighting for building a factory and etc., they could have just killed the competition. Why am I telling you this story? The reason I'm telling you this story that one of the things in manufacturing is how do you allocate capital? And you talked about the cost competitiveness and all that. Unfortunately, in the world of manufacturing, infrastructure, logistics, we all have been deprived of what I call the cloud offering. See, today we've got a cloud taxi, so you can get an Uber. I don't need to own an Uber to be moving from point A to point B. I don't need to be owning a hotel to live in Bangalore. I don't need. Now there's a cloud kitchens, right? You don't need to own a kitchen to be a restaurant owner. I think the manufacturing industry suffered from not having a cloud offering. So that's something which is changing in the world now. Many of these things which you talk about, they have a cloud kind of an offering where you need to not own everything. But of course, it comes with its own challenges. We'll talk about that. The second thing is that the manufacturing suffers from the classic challenge of inelasticity. You got to predict your world 10, 20, 30 years down the line and plan for it today, and a large amount of capital goes in that. And then third is manufacturing facilities change over time, whereas it's very hard for companies to do in that period of time. And the last one I would talk about is this whole ecosystem. So manufacturing random versus manufacturing an ecosystem are two completely different outcomes. So those are the few things which I am seeing now. If I were to look at the manufacturing of 20 years ago versus manufacturing of 10 years down the line, I think these are some of these things which are changing. So with that backdrop, if I were to just throw it out to you to say, where are you seeing these kinds of challenges as you see India or your own company becoming competitive, not just on cost, but also on value and quality? So with that, let me open it to whoever wants to go first, saying what are the kind of opportunities you see and are there challenges which address those opportunities?
Yeah. Can I go first?
Yes, Prashant.
Yeah. See, when we talk about the opportunity, the first thing is the customer demand, the market.
Your mic is not switched on. Yeah, now it looks like.
Okay. When we talk about the growth, I think the first thing is the customer demand. and a sustainable demand. So in my industry, if you see aerospace and defense growth between 2005 to 2015, it was quite slow. But from 2015 to till now, what we are seeing is a huge demand, both on commercial as well as the defense side. So, so for any foreign companies to win a business in India, there is a policy called as a DPP, Defense Procurement Policy, which asks those foreign companies to give a lot to Indian companies.
Yeah.
So when I say a lot to Indian companies, it is the business, it is the technology, and also in terms of a long-term order book. So these are all commitments which is put in place from the government side. Now the challenge comes that foreign companies want to give this business, but they do not see enough partners, enough capabilities, and enough infrastructures. So currently what is happening is, for any entrepreneurs to grow and any entrepreneurs to enter the market, so there are three kinds of entry barriers we have. The first one is the capex. It needs capex, and the return on investment and break even sometimes take 4 to 5 years. And once those break evens happen, the growth will be very fast. But to sustain cash flow, to sustain the entire ecosystem for 3 to 5 years is a very big challenge for Indian entrepreneurs. The second thing is the engineering skill sets. To grow in aerospace and defense industry, it is very important to have a greater margin. You should also have an engineering skill set. So as of now, whatever Indian companies have done, it's mostly the engineering IPs with foreign companies, and what we do is basically labor. It's conversion of their design to manufacturing kind of thing. So second challenge what we have is basically a skill. And the third thing what we have is the infrastructure itself. So what we can do here is, like my company is also looking for an opportunity to establish an organization in Morocco. So I had been to Morocco around 6 to 7 times. Morocco being a very small country, but the business model what they have put in place is, as a company, if I want to go and set up some manufacturing plant there are 3 organizations they have, and it is all funded, governed and managed by the kingdom themselves. The first organization is called as IMA. You give them the requirement that I need 250 skilled operators, so and so staff and all. They go, they recruit, train, and they give you, and all this is free for you. You have to do only some kind of a minimal payment on this one, on their like students internship and those kind of things. So they have a complete university kind of structure, which is basically an industry replica kind of thing. The second one is they have an organization called as Midpark. Midpark is like a project management kind of an organization. So they do have a very sophisticated industrial park. So what you need is basically you have to go and ask them how much space you need, and you will find entire infrastructure kind of ready. So it is like plug and play. There is a standard office, infrastructure and all. And third one is there is a lot of incentives for job creation and all. So in India, I feel that we also have all these things, but they are not connected. So anybody want to put an investment, they have to go and struggle with so many organization and all. So I feel this business model wherein it will become an ease of
doing business.
And the entrepreneur has to I think he has to put more effort on building the technology, bringing the business.
I completely agree with you that a lot of capital as well as management attention goes into topics which are not core to the business, but ancillary, and that's where I think everybody is looking for solutions. So thank you so much, Prashant, for sharing that. Anybody else want to say what is a very different opportunity in India which manufacturing or infrastructure could solve?
I have to add
Sorry,
Yes,
go ahead.
let's go
something.
with Nandini.
As an entrepreneur who has grown from a micro to a small to a medium enterprise today.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I want to mention that one core factor that all manufacturing players miss here in India is that we don't have the 100% quality consciousness. So that has to be made as a academic subject as to what is the importance of giving 100% yield and 100% qualified products, because today we see that if we are able to give about 99 or 98%, we are very happy because we think that we have achieved something really great, but the entire cost of that 2% which we don't give is where we suffer and we are not able to compete. So today China's labor is twice the cost of what we are giving to our entry level operators. It's twice as much as we pay, but then their yield is pakka 100%. So that's where we have a big gap. And so if we have to really be good in manufacturing and match Chinese players or anybody for that matter, we should be having the 100% quality consciousness, and that has to be made as a subject in our engineering schools.
So quality is a subject. I love your optimism, but let me just share my take on. I once went to a medical school, and I asked them, saying, what's the average score? Because I'm an engineer, I'm not a medical doctor. I said, what's the average score of the people who pass out of this college? Surprise, surprise, it's 52%. Which basically means that if you looked at the average of all the students, all the subjects, most people graduate at 52%. Which basically means that 48% of the time they were wrong in answering the question. Would you like to go to a doctor who says, I'm right 52% of the time? So actually the mindset is truly not 100%, but I kind of relate to that. Another fun experience I'll share. This is about 20 years old experience. I went to China to buy a specialized keyboard for a company called Domino's Pizza, which is now big. They were small at that point in time. And India wasn't manufacturing those specialized POS keyboards. So we went to many factories. Some of them are very, very small, which were making these things. And we ordered some 600 keyboards for various POS. And when the shipment came, it came with a note saying that, we are sending you 650 keyboards because we know our error rejection rate is 8%. Don't come for warranty. 8% of the keyboards won't work, but so you got 8% extra. Love that thing about the anybody else on here we are seeing the yes.
I support the view of Nandini. In terms of skill set, design part, India is no doubt the best, but when it comes to hands-on experience, the productivity, efficiency, our neighbors are much, much better than us. On an administrative side, on a functionality side, even on, electronics handle side. That, of course, there is a lot of push in it. I would have suggested here the bureaucratic people should also involve in knowing the technology know-how. One is on the administration side, on the policy and second things. And you must know what is the relevant technology which is prevailing, which needs to be done. For example, my failure case is ISM 10, which we missed out because they specified a chip as 6-inch chip. Globally, that time world has already moved to a 4-inch chip. Yeah. And I wasted 2 years going from post to a pillar to a minister to an electronics engineer to everyone explain how the 4-inch is all about. Now they've incorporated a 4-inch chip in the ISM 2 after we mentioning, even went one step ahead in saying it should be a standard of a Seoul semiconductor after explaining them. Had it been an engineer or somebody from that background, which we can learn from other countries. China is also same. What is China? They have a good ecosystem. No doubt about it. You do not have a house to sleep, but you have a factory to work. You have only house to sleep, no factory to work. So that's on.
I love that. I think the bureaucratic processes need to be backed with technological capabilities.
Yes, Taiwan as well. Of course, South Korea is advanced. Now, with that, the AI has come into the picture. Between 2026 to 2030, if we do not set up this kind of AI with the technology of semiconductors, electronics, EMS, and all, we may again miss the bus. State governments are aggressive, they're all coming with that. The bureaucracy has to be more faster. And the passion for setting up this has to come in the mind first than any other interest. That's I still feel.
Thank you, Arshi. I'll take one more point on this segment. So, where do we see the big opportunity for India to leapfrog? And then I'll go to the next one. Please.
I
And
think
Ram, I'll come to you as well because I saw you were coming in. So, after Sachin.
Okay. I think one of the key areas which I would like to add in addition to what everyone's talk about is the logistics sector. So clearly see a space where we mess on both the physical and the digital infrastructure with respect to logistics. We keep talking about our logistics spend is 13-14% of GDP. We are working towards it. But if we look at the problem that any manufacturing company faces in terms of shipping the goods to the consumers, it has to go through multiple modals. And the multimodals, the airways, the railways are not very well connected. Happen to speak to some of the government secretaries and they talk about that all of these are part of the different industries or different ministries within the government. So I think we are definitely working towards the ease of doing business, but definitely there is a significant scope with respect to digital infrastructure as well. We keep talking about the better connectivity, road improvements and so on. However, we see still an area to cover in the digital space.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Rama?
I think, rightly say, if you look at any manufacturing, you are producing products, we have to look at in terms of what kind of manufacturing we are envisaging, right? Say, if you are looking from end-to-end product development, which is starting from design all the way to manufacturing. Thanks, I think Krishna mentioned about we are good in design. Question is, are we good in designing product, taking to manufacturing, or we are good in designing for somebody else? So there is a disconnect. So when I build a product, I am responsible for the quality, like whatever you said, right? Keyboard, 8% of the keyboard comes back. The person who is selling, his reputation is at stake about this 8% failure.
Right.
So this 8% failure translates to probably 0.5% failure in component A, 0.5% failure, and it gets compounded. So the key here is one of our key problem, at least I would say, I'll not call it as a problem. We are into a transitioning from doing manufacturing for others versus doing manufacturing for ourselves. So the pain we are going through is like I'm first generation entrepreneur, right? I've worked for others and then now I'm trying to do myself, right? So it's the same story for everybody in the ecosystem. So when somebody asks me like there are like today where we are, it's because we had an ecosystem. I'll not blame there is no ecosystem because without ecosystem, I would have not come this far. The question now is where we want to be. We want to be globally competitive. So this journey will continue. The pain will continue for a couple of more generations. But we don't have choice. India don't have choice, right? It's not about wishful thinking or belief. We have no choice to make products for 1.4 billion people if we are consuming, because today the segment we are in, it's about 90% or 95% of the equipment comes from outside.
Yeah.
If it is manufactured here, it can generate a lot of jobs. Yeah. The question now is, do we have that maturity in terms of design? Can we work with the ecosystem? Can we drive the ecosystem? And there is a belief system, right? Whatever, like if somebody is working for prototype, he has to believe that I will give a volume. Today, I should be confident promising it so that the ecosystem partner also start investing in automation, making it better, how to improve the quality. So it's a collective effort of the ecosystem. So there is a need for, beyond the regulatory, beyond the what comes from the government, there is a need for us to transform ourselves, seeing beyond what we are seeing. Whatever order, like let's say I'm giving probably 10 orders, 20 numbers today, but I should be able to explain them, say this is 20 today, tomorrow 200, in a year it will become 2000. That visibility is very important, and also the trust based system, right? Because finally, like, I'll be asking for a lower cost.
Yeah.
If I don't deliver, he has invested and I have failed him.
True.
So there is a mutual, well connected network that has to be built. I don't know. That's something which I see is very important as we scale.
I think you make a fantastic point, and this trouble is not just in manufacturing. In many parts where India has become a great talent capability, so we can do a lot of work for others, but not take it right to the end market, win it, build a brand, and build leadership on the product reliability and some of those areas. You talked about some of those challenges. I think they're all relevant. But before I move to the next segment, let me invite Nilesh, because when I was chatting with him, I realized that he works with many of these industries which are present here, and you might be able to bring in maybe a collective view of the world.
Yeah, no, pretty interesting. So, as I said at the beginning of the session, is that we are here to listen from the industry. I think one common thread which came across was, as Prashant brought it out, the need for plug and play infra and the way you are finding that in some of the other countries. Let me bring to you some statistics, from India. Our exports are going to cross about $1 trillion USD, which is GDP of only 20 odd countries today. Our EMS mobile manufacturing is gone from 2 units to 300 units. So there are those many plants who are actually manufacturing, those many number of phones. Before any kind of geopolitical situation actually came in to play, Apple kind of strategized their supply chain away from China much before COVID. And today India has grown for them from about 5% to about 20% of their global manufacturing share. The point that I'm trying to make here is that there is a lot of plug and play infra that is available in India. A lot of times, probably the prospects who really want to avail of those facilities, and there are people who can make it available, probably have not been able to, connect as much. For example, as we speak, we facilitate right from a chip manufacturing to 100-meter long mid-bed manufacturing within our parks, and these are all plug and play facilities. So I'm sure there are a lot of other developments which are happening. I also heard from Sachin on the need for the phygital infra. This used to be a area of my liking to debate. I've spent more than a decade with supply chain before I came to the infra side. And I have always challenged that India does not spend 14 to 15% of GDP on logistics. It's a published number from somewhere, and that's a number that is carried on for long. If we pick up balance sheet of the top 100 listed companies in India, you will see that they are in the range of about 7 to 8%. And they all aspire to bring it down to about 4.5, 5 to 5.5, 6%. Right? So from somewhere this 14-15% number, government appointed NCAR some time back to really study what's our logistics for, and they came out with a number of about 9.5-10%. But for the kind of opportunity that India presents to the global stage, we certainly can optimize way beyond where we are today. So the drop that has to go from 10 to about 5.5, that still opportunity exists. So these are some of the points I wanted to bring when the infrastructure is being discussed. The last on what Arshi brought out. So semiconductor is really very interesting space today. A lot of developments in different parts. Right, while you said that Bangalore could be one interesting location where everybody, or at least you would like the development to start. But today, if you see, it's in different parts of India, with Gujarat, Noida, and some part of it in South, which is attracting a lot of investments. To combine your thought about how do we grow that sector and to what Prashant said about plug and play, we are in the process of trying to develop a very large vendor park for Tata in Dholera. Right, and the size is enormous.
Yes.
So I think these are opportunities which are really existing on ground, and all of us are going to benefit as once this ecosystem starts collaborating with each other.
accept.
So, Nilesh, when you say you are creating the ecosystem, what all it will have?
So, if I take the same example of developing a large vendor park for supporting a specific sector's manufacturing, we are able to create three types of offerings there. The plug and play infra includes the entire master planning and development of all the basic infra which is needed for production. Then we construct all the facilities. So our assessment is that 60-70% of the vendors are able to use a standard spec building to do their light manufacturing. About 20-30% of them, they really need a lot of customization. So you take a little bit of time and design it along with collaborating with those manufacturers. These are all global organizations that I'm talking about. And then obviously they need the social and the office infrastructure. So that's what the overall plug and play master plan for a vendor park looks like. And this is significant in size. I would say it's about 300-350 odd acres that we are talking about to support. And semicon is not, you can't achieve in one fab. Right? They have to construct 3, 4, 5 fabs over a period of time for them to really hit that mark where you become globally competitive. But it's happening. So that's the message that I want to get, that it's really happening here as well. And a lot of role, government, yes, it's still not on the multimodal side also I noted. Multimodal is very difficult to integrate in India. It's a very complicated part of the logistics which we all aspire to do. But a better problem or an easier problem to solve is to create the physical infra to either produce or store.
Thank you, Nilesh. I do want to come to Sandeep with my second segment as I get into this. We talked about ecosystem 3 times in your desire thing. You talked about ecosystem vendor park, what you're trying to create. We've all lived through the organic growth of the Indian ecosystem of manufacturers and all that. But I want to now shift to say, what could be the desired situation for an ecosystem? Imagine if you had the ability to rebuild. Let's say if you were to start now instead of where you started many years ago. What would good look like from reducing the cost of logistics, reducing the interplayer component transfer, reducing all the other challenges which typically a randomly distributed manufacturing brings in? If you were to look at an ecosystem approach, what would be your wish list?
I think Nilesh brought a good point, because if you see typically when you look at when you go to bigger maybe players, like if you go to China and other places, you see a factory of a large size, right, which helps them to go to a scale and then build and reduce the overall cost. I'll just give some numbers. If you look at from a industry perspective, why we are not able to be more competitive. The basic metal which goes into manufacturing is steel, right? India is 20% plus costly than China, right? I was looking at the container numbers. If you had to produce a container in China versus India, the input steel, you are 20% more. So you cannot be cost competitive. Even you may bring in the skill, the quality, everything, but the basic raw material is costly. And why it makes costly is the infrastructure, because steel is produced way far away in the country, and then it has to come to every part of the India, right? And then that brings in the cost of logistics, I think what you pointed out. So if I had to start really building from a scratch or from a clean slate, I think what Nilesh mentioned is, can we look at a bigger industrial towns, right? Putting things into bigger perspective, not for today, not for tomorrow, maybe. That should be a vision for 30 years, 40 years from now. Okay, what they should be. I think if you see, I think we were talking about electronic city phase 1, phase 2. When you build that, even if today we have to make it one way, you cannot even let 2 cars pass, right? So we didn't think about it. It's a very big complex. We made it from scratch. But the proper planning, because the amount of time we take to unload a truck in our industry or in our factories, or it's 3 times the time we spend versus anybody else in a China or somewhere else. It takes them 7-8 minutes to unload a full 40 feet container, because they just go in, walk in and walk out. That's it. But for us, even at the port, you can imagine how much time does it take to the cargo to come to the CFS, and from CFS to reach to you. I think it's better now with the AEO at least comes directly, but those kind of infrastructure, because think about the manufacturing space. We are in Bangalore today, right? The port is in Chennai. The time it takes from Chennai to Bangalore and Bangalore to a factory, it should be less than 24 hours, right? But it doesn't happen today. It takes weeks. So if I had to really go, I think I would like to have the bigger enclaves built, which are massive industrial parks with a clear demarcation on the, I think, because if you see the China, I feel they did not look at a social angle, which they missed. They just build dormitories. I'll put Indian culture there, like we have nice social housing, maybe housing and everything, the infrastructure to take care of that, and then the bigger industrial parks, which takes care of the logistics, the infrastructure, the plug and play. I think I like your idea of a cloud kitchen, right? I think that's the biggest opportunity which India can possess. I think we have a lot of skills, we have a lot of niche technology, we have a lot of engineering mindset, we call it Jugaad technology in India, right? So we can really use that and maybe have the cloud manufacturing approach. I think you don't need to have everything with you, right? You're doing a PCBA manufacturing. Do you need to put everything in-house? I don't think so. But the infrastructure near to you can really, because that person gets the scale and he can reduce the cost. And then you get advantage and you can reduce your cost and quality. I think the skill set that person will need can be built. But when he gets the scale, now imagine there's no scale, he will try to compromise on the equipment, the machine, and the skill set to generate some kind of output. But imagine when there's a big industrial town and this person is manufacturing for the entire campus, he gets a huge scale. When he gets the huge scale, then he can justify the investment he wants to put in. And with the infrastructure, if you are just plug and play, oh, today my job is done, I think this is no longer required, I just move out from here and go to new industrial park, I shift, somebody else comes in, takes his place, and he's still productive, right? So that's the way I look at it. I think that's the future. I think we need to start thinking in those directions strategically. I think we're seeing now, I think we saw Tata putting a factory in Krishnagiri. We are looking at Delta putting a big factory in Krishnagiri. But you see, the infrastructure is not there for them to support. There's no people, no housing, nothing, right? Even if they want to hire people, but it cannot be supported with the local infrastructure. There's no buses. So it becomes difficult for the people. But you have to think full ecosystem which can really support the industry.
I completely agree. So few data points I'll bring it here, and in substantiating the point which Sandeep is talking about, logistics is the cost which customer does not get any value out of. Every component I get value out of, logistics is the cost which you talked about the real numbers. I agree, those are the possibly the real numbers, but it's still very high. And how do we kind of try and reduce it? The second part is ecosystem you talked about is not just factories. It's factories, people, providers, and all of that. And that is a big challenge India has. Third thing I would like to mention from my experience is that sometimes people think that the big manufacturers should go to big parks. That's not true. Both big and small manufacturers have to go to the park, because in fact, smaller you are, the better it is for you to be part of a bigger ecosystem than vice versa. But unfortunately, operational challenges, capital challenges, and all of that have kind of stopped all of us from moving that direction. Let me invite maybe you, sir, to this topic, because I was looking at your profile. You have a fair bit of experience, so share some of your learnings with us.
Yeah, I would like to touch upon one factor which we have not discussed till now. Says about scalable, our discussions today. Scale is actually much bigger than volume.
That was one of your starting points.
Yeah. Scale is not just volume. Yeah, I do understand that. But then the first thought that comes to our mind when we talk about scale is volume. Yeah, when you say voluminous manufacturing, what do we usually talk about? We talk about low tech. We do not talk about high tech. We talk about toys. We talk about dresses. Yeah, and then maybe we talk about PCBs now. Yeah, but okay. But when we talk about volumes today, the most critical issue is the labor, the people. Yeah, we did speak about development of skill, uh, but I feel our labor uh, reforms, our labor rules, these are still there needs to be a big change in the way we look at it. I do accept and agree that our politicians have a responsibility even for social justice, so they cannot do something drastic. But I have a different thinking that our government should increase the minimum wages. Yeah. Today, when we talk about cost competitiveness, we say we are still cost competitive because our labor wages are low. You know, but then there are hundreds of things which are going wrong because our labor wages are low. Skill development. Yeah, you name any big company, in the country, PSUs or government, everywhere people, when the moment you talk about volumes, we talk about contract workers. Yeah, we never talk about employees. Nobody wants to have permanent regular employees. We always want to have contract workers. You take PSUs, you take our flag bearer Suzuki, you go there, you will see contract workers. You take government industries, you take contract workers. Even madam must have had contract workers. I don't say it's wrong, but then this is the result of today's approach, where we say we reduce the minimum wages, 11,000, 12,000. The part of the country which has developed, the southern part, though you spoke about traffic problems in Bangalore, South India has developed much more than the north. The indicator is that if today you want people for 11,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees jobs in Bangalore, in southern India, you get all people outside South India. You don't get any native South Indians for doing jobs for 15,000 rupees. Yeah, this is expected because as long as there is labor available to work for 15,000 rupees in any part of the country, they will migrate. Yeah, today migration is easy, they will migrate. So if you need this level to go up, you have to wait till the whole of the country develops. Yeah, our country is a very big country, so it will take a long time before this happens. But the government, I feel, should increase the minimum wages, let's say to 25,000 rupees, and then every year keep on increasing it. But remove all other obstacles for all entrepreneurs. Like her, you say you can switch on a factory today, you can switch it off tomorrow. Yeah, you say you can transfer your factories. You say you can do what you want, but increase the minimum wages. Meet your social responsibilities by saying minimum wages are higher. Encourage people even in the lower category to change jobs. Today, what happens in labor? If you employ a labor, he expects to work in the same factory till his retirement, and then he wants 15% hike every year. He wants social levels to go up. These are all contradicting each other. Encourage movement of labor even at lower levels. Have a higher minimum wage. You have then possibility of skill development. People get recognized for the skills then. Then also an entrepreneur will develop a skill. So you need to do something different in this labor area, in order to talk about building skills, making scale production in a bigger scale easier and faster. Of course, this is not the only issue with respect to technological products. Approach is different, issues are different, perspectives are different. But today the situation is, even if factories can come up with, let's say, 5,000 workers, nobody wants to do it. People will say, no, I will have 10 factories of 500 people each rather than have one factory of 5,000. Now this nobody wants to do it. So this somewhere something is wrong. Today, if you talk of scale and if you talk of volumes, we have to do something about our labor laws.
I think the way you framed it, I should have invited you at the end, because this is really the end note for the mother of all problems and all that. But I do want to explore a couple of more topics. But I think I would end on a very important note. You said that the labor reforms, the labor issues are far more deeper and more significant for us to deal with it. But maybe let me bring some of you who have not heard so far. Let's talk a little bit about where do you see the maximum opportunity to see what the good looks like in terms of either ecosystem or any other approach. And trying to see how infrastructure particularly could get better. Anything from you? And maybe an integrated manufacturing. What could good look like there?
Yeah. See, manufacture, what we have seen is we become competitive with more high value addition. Wherever merely going by, cheap, India is a cheap place to produce, that's not really giving us the competitiveness. It's because, that's 4-5% of your cost. What we have seen is we have done nearly 68-70% of localization in the we do industrial machinery. I think with more and more as I hear, electronics that is coming into India, I think, we will do more of localization. We will not be depending on China for, a lot of electronics or this. So this is integrated manufacturing is definitely is going to be very helpful. And as you talked about, concept of cloud kitchen, we have a lot of micro industries, small micro industries. We depend on a lot. We have a lot of suppliers in Bangalore, in Pune, which is the industrial hub there. They really have issues with these, and then there is a quality issue with them. These things can be built up on a common platform if we also have industrial clusters where they have support for like ITIs, training centers are there to develop their skills, which is very important for small scale industries. Uh, and as we see, there is a lot of migration. People are coming from different places. Quality is taking a big hit in this, where people are absorbing low cost labor, and there's no one is there to train them. And we see this issue. We build very high quality product, and where our customers worldwide, when they see a machine, they see as though they are buying a Ferrari, when the finish is there and other things. But still, we are able to build under this condition. And with high level of localization, we are able to achieve the competitiveness. When the tariff was increased by USA is our biggest market. There was a move to ship the product from Italy to USA, but then finally we calculated still it was cheaper with the tariff to make the product in India and sell in USA. So
that's the desired state for all of us.
Yeah. So it is there. We have a lot of good things happening, integrated manufacturing, quality, but clusters coming in. We heard about clusters coming in for manufacturing. If you talk about furniture industry in India, which is taken as a star industry, I'm talking a report of IKEA about 4 or 5 years back, comparing with just the apple to apple comparison of Vietnam, the income group of India's middle income people with Vietnam. We should have had we were just 10% per capita in furniture consumption of Vietnam.
Wow.
So that's the opportunity we have. It's a huge opportunity, but this can happen, if there is a cluster manufacturing where the logistic cost is very high. You have to bring the big boards, the fittings are there, machines are there. Now we are working to have one cluster near Navi Mumbai, over 300 acres are there. So machine manufacturers can have their experience center where we can do the skill set development, we can do the space service, board manufacturer, plywood manufacturer come in, Heritage or other people bring in the fittings, and the furniture could be made there, and it could be moved from Mumbai and exported from there. So industrial clusters is going to help a lot. That's a very need of the day for us.
Thank you. I want to invite Sita.
Yeah.
Sitaram. Okay, because one is I love Herman products. And two is I have seen a high degree of evolved manufacturing capability which you guys have been able to build here. So why do I hear from you?
Yeah, thank you for that. So he touched upon this cluster manufacturing. See, we talk more on the ecosystem. Ecosystem is there related to specific categories. Right? For electronics, if you see, the cluster is still not there. Right? We have been struggling a lot with import dependencies, which we are not able to develop here locally. We have very high dependencies on imports, close to about 80 to 85% are still imported, right? Most of the components. We don't have a capability of component manufacturing here in India, right? There are government schemes which have come in the last 4 5 years, but it's still at a very nascent stage, right? As we mentioned, if we want to build infrastructure, it has to be a cluster manufacturing infrastructure along with the root industry, right? If you want to have a benefit, especially in terms of logistics or just-in-time manufacturing or scale, right? If you don't have your component manufacturing within like 100 kilometers vicinity, it becomes really, really difficult, right? And especially with import dependencies, it's really, really hard, right? If you want to build scale and competency here for high-tech manufacturing, we mentioned that we are good at manufacturing. Yes, for mechanical items, we are very good. India is very good, not in terms of electronics, because we have seen mobile phones. Yes, electronics means most of them think about mobile phones. Yes, you have world-class players like Foxconn, Salcom, everyone is there. But that is not the only category in electronics, right? And those are built for scale, right? And where you have very large consumption within India as well as for export market as well. Mobile ancillary market, ancillary manufacturers, it took almost like 5 to 6 years for them to set up here in India, right? But for other industries, right, other than mobile electronics, if you want to scale up, it will take another 4 5 years minimum for us to get the cluster manufacturing, the ecosystem built. So, for a fact, we were trying to get one of our ODMs in China to set up a manufacturing plant in India with a collaboration. Last week, he came in, right? He saw the infrastructure, what is there in India, right? He is one of the chairmen in one of the provinces in the global chairman. That is the Industry Association for Electronics Manufacturing in China. He came out with very, very hard biting facts that India is not ready. That if I have to bring in my manufacturing, I have to bring 10 other companies if I have to set it up here. Right. One thing which you mentioned as an opportunity, India has got large engineering skill set, right? Many of the companies, especially the manufacturing companies, when they were looking at G+1, China plus one concept, many were looking at Vietnam. But that is being debunked right now because Vietnam cannot go into that scale because they lack a lot of engineering capabilities that India has, which we are not leveraging. See, as a country, we are trying to compete instead of collaborating with China. They have the technology, they have the capabilities. If we collaborate and learn from them, right? So right now, what has happened is, as a government effort, there are a lot of restrictions, constraints which are put in, right? Which puts a lot of hardship on the companies to bring in these kind of technologies into India. They are not ready to invest. We are not allowing them to invest as well. Right? So instead of a competing approach, they also learn from Russia, China, Russia and US and everyone, right? We also should collaborate in a much deeper way to get those technologies and make them invest in India.
I can relate to you, and Prashant kind of alluded to that fact to say that how do we look at global collaboration? Not only just us learning as industries, but governments learning. I think the example which you gave is a great story for me to go back. I want to invite Nilesh here because many of the things you talked about, I know you have some suggestion for all of us to look for. So anything from your side on this? Yes.
I liked one line when Saeed brought it out that when the geopolitical tariff situation kind of cropped in, and you still landed on the conclusion it's still cheaper to make in India and then export. This is one thing which we saw across the board, that while even we went through the tariff hikes, but we were still on the good side of it because most of the other countries it's still difficult and very costly to manufacture. If I were to really sum up, everything that I heard, I even heard from Sitaraman that India is still not ready purely for from the EMS side of it. I think largely, if you take the view, I think we are on the right course. There are two large enablers other than what I spoke initially about capital, etc. Is that infrastructure, which instead of just developing it in patches, if you are able to build large clusters and also bring the socio-economic the aspect to it, I think that's the way to go. And the second, which is coming all across, is the skill sets. I think it's a completely different league altogether. What's happening on ground today is that because you cannot bring or move skill sets from where they are to everywhere where you would like them to be, which is where exactly your clusters are getting developed closer to where those specific skill sets are. In a recent conversation we had with a very large aerospace manufacturer, they said that we are okay to invest almost 2x of what we would otherwise invest if we are able to be very close to the north side of the Bangalore, because that is where those specific engineering skill sets are. And they wanted an affirmation from someone like us to say yes, that yeah, we would also like to go there. So in terms of building those large towns, getting an infra, and then making it work along with the skill set availability, I think that's the only way that probably will see the light of the day. Rest, I think the industry has given a lot of views which I'm sure we all will implement in our upcoming
Your strategy, yes. But before I thank everybody and I thank ET and Ascendas once again, I want to at least hear from three of you, if not more, at least three of you, because a setting like this is very valuable. I'm sure each one of you would reflect on saying, what did I achieve in this 75 minutes which you spent here? But assuming that we have opportunity to come back again here in this kind of a setting, what is that one thing which you would like us to discuss and bring to the table which you will find valuable? Any topic? Yes, Vijay.
I think one of the major topic we left here is the deep tech, right? I think we thought about manufacturing, everything, which is fantastic. India is coming up with OSATs and manufacturing, right? But deep tech is the way to go forward for next 20 years, right? And for that, what you need to do, patient capital, right? China has spent $150 billion,
yes,
right, for
and we are
semiconductors. Yeah, exactly, right. And now we are talking about space tech. We are talking about other deep techs coming into picture. But semiconductors, space tech, they do require patient capital, and there has to be a topic on deep tech to support the ecosystem of manufacturing here, right? Be it cost effective, be it value proposition. I would.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Again, as I said, ISM 2.0, I'm also working with Niti Ayog on a frontier tech report on semiconductor. Hopefully, we'll release it in a couple of weeks. I spent a lot of time talking to people. I missed conversation, but I would love to connect with you offline. But I like that deep tech is another way of creating India's competitiveness and not just the engineering and classic manufacturing. So if Ascendas again is willing to pay and bring us all together, I think we will try and talk about that. Yes, sir.
I would like to suggest a few things with respect to what Nilesh said about parks. See, of course, the private parks, private industrial parks might have gone a little bit further in this. But what does the government do when it says it's making a park? Roads and then real estate development. Make a plot and then allot it to you. Nothing else. Lot more things need to be done in a park. For example, can a park do little bit more on common infrastructure? For example, fire services. Today, as per the Factories Act, you just take a small plot, you still need to if you take our building construction in our special economic zone plot, almost because we wanted to follow the law to the dot and comma, we had to spend at least 20% more on the building. If we had common facilities, fire, sewage treatment, cafeteria, even that. Otherwise, Factories Act, you have to have a canteen. So in your park,
it should be truly an integrated plug and play and not just the infrastructure or building.
So this is something that we have to work upon. Maybe it's done in a private park, but the condition in the government parks today, in KIDB and in SEZ, government has allotted this land, 50% is still not occupied. We all say we need parks. I can show you empty plots. Why? There are many reasons for it, but this is the state of affairs. Government makes a park, people are not there to come and occupy it.
Thank you. So you say, please address it.
I'm glad you brought this because when I gave the example of what's currently happening in Dholera for supporting the Tata Semicon plants, this is exactly the point which was brought by us, and it was so very well acknowledged by the IAS officer who's currently heading that entity which is called Dholera Industrial Development Corporation Limited. Very senior gentleman on the government side, and it was heartening to hear and see that the gentleman agreed that the government does not have this know-how, because this is exactly what Tata brought, what we brought on the table, and the outcome of that conversation is that entire utility, including power, water, fire, road development, land development, purely other than plot and road, everything is going to be part of one single master plan, which is getting developed through a association of someone like us who can construct, and some of the global designers who can build those kind of industrial parks. So I would say that you're absolutely right. Some of those conventionally built government parks, they really lack the ingredients which are then needed to integrate the final offering. But I think they've acknowledged in a lot of cities that this is not their know-how, so they need to bring in experts, and they're very happy to do these kind of partnerships with some of the developers.
So Nilesh, if I could take it completely objective and unbiased person, what I'm hearing from the group here is that yes, private sector might have achieved it, but that's not enough, and that's not the only solution. So how can people like you actually take the voice of this group and to the government also create some representation? I'm happy to participate, and also evolve better public-private partnership option, evolve better, even educating the government for free. The point which Prashant made about what's happening in other part of the world, I think it's somewhat I think our responsibility to also. And the good news that there is a recognition in the government saying what they can and can't do, but I think it's our obligation to raise the level of or elevate the topic further. I heard deep tech is a new topic going to hear. I heard some this thing. Prashant, please.
Yeah. See, when we talk about the future ready, most important thing is our skilled manpower. So today, AICTE organization, which is a governing body for engineering and
Management,
they have done the survey. Their survey says that 82% of the engineers who are passing out from the colleges are not industry ready. I was a part of one NGO kind of an organization for 4 years, and their objective was to enable AICT's vision. So AICT has put a lot of vision that how do you connect industry to academic institutions. So I was working with 5 engineering colleges as an independent director for upgrading their syllabus as well as educating the professors, and tying up education industries to education institution to provide internships. So if you see the countries like Switzerland, especially when you go to Geneva, so Geneva is one city which has a very, very high-tech precision product manufacturing like Rolex and those kind of things. From the first year itself, all the students work in factories and they are ready to integrate. So we copied that model, tied up with 38 5 engineering colleges and 38 companies. So what we saw is industries themselves don't know how to do the internship.
Yes.
So people come and they will put up their some. So what I'm trying to say here is this is the area where there is ecosystem required. So our government spend on the education system also, if you see, it is compared to any developed countries, it is not up to the mark. So that is why we are going more towards service and doing the job rather than innovation kind of thing. I think this area we need to discuss and explore more ideas on this, and
So
there should be a partnering between government, private, and education institute.
Maybe we bring NSDC into the conversation. So National Scaling Development Corporation.
I have one
Yes,
story.
Yes.
So that you understand the difference between, I'll just give you a story of South Korea. I happened to be there in my factory in South Korea, and there was one faulty smoke alarm.
Okay.
The response time for a fire engine to come is 120 seconds. And we didn't know that there was a faulty alarm, and suddenly we saw 2 fire engines next to our gate. They're asking us to vacate the entire facility. That's coming to the integrated system I was referring to. So they took 45 minutes to scan the entire facility and take out that faulty fire alarm and replaced it, and then they went back. The fire engines was on on standby, and we were all waiting for them to allow us to go in. I'm just giving an example. 120 seconds the time to threshold they come in, and then we didn't knew even one of fire alarm is making noise in their campus. So that's what we are looking at from industry overall. So.
Yeah, I will bring Nandini, but I would say that for me, fire alarm sounds like a traffic noise, so I ignore it. I tell my assistant saying when there's a fire alarm going to go, just move me into a different office. Yes.
Yeah. So in Electronic City, we have a EMC cluster, and I'm part of the cluster. So I want to bring few practical difficulties which we have faced there. So this EMC cluster has got various equipments funded by the government, and so the main problem the cluster is facing now is that it's not sustainable. So we have equipments worth 15 crores or 20 crores, all funded by government. One is they're outdated, so we're not able to upgrade the same now, and goes through various processes. And second is that the operational costs have to be met by the cluster as such now, which is impossible. So what happens in the cluster is that the common facility center is now turning out to be more expensive than the private because the cluster has to pay.
Yeah.
So it becomes much more expensive. This is a practical problem we are facing. And also another point is that there are various industrial clusters, testing facilities available all across the state and the country, but there is no common dashboard to understand which cluster has got what facility.
capability.
And they may be replicating. So we go to the government. There is a industrial association called CLIck, which goes to the government and asks for some anechoic chamber, and then again LCR goes to the government and asks for the same, and then nothing gets approved because there are various. So there has to be a common dashboard as to which cluster has got what facility and whether it's occupied or not occupied, and when we can. So when I had one of the projects, I had to go up to Mysore to get one test done for an anechoic chamber because we couldn't find something here, and there are a few, but then not available for various reasons. So this is a practical difficulty which we faced.
Good point. I know you're tempted to say if you're not good, then it's fine.
I'm good.
Because one thing I want to tell you that I've finished half of this, which indicates that I'm hungry, and if I'm hungry, you must be hungry too.
Yes.
So I can't stay between you and the food. But before I close, I want to thank all of you. It's important to commit our time to topics which normally we don't deal with in our day-to-day life. I can learn everything in my own world, but I learn much faster if I have everybody together. So I hope you found it valuable. I found it hugely valuable. And once again, thank you, ETH, and thank you, Ascendas, for getting us here. I do want to say that it was impossible for us to cover everything which we wanted. Primarily because the issues are so wide, the kind of industry representation which you got here is good everywhere. I picked up few points which I'll try and summarize. But my suggestion would be that next time if we bring this group together, if we can address some of these topics which we felt, especially around skilling, especially around deep tech and all that, will also make it very, very good. But if I were to leave you with two learnings which I have had, the first one is that there's a lot of capital allocation which is going into things which are not priority just because the infrastructure setup has been what it's been in the past. So if there is a way for us to move to an asset light model, it creates a huge possibility of us allocating capital somewhere else, elasticity of our expansion, and also trying and doing things which otherwise would have taken much longer for us to do. And the second is that factory build design is no longer a generic capability. I've seen that there's a big difference between building a factory by the right capabilities and expertise and building a factory by generic capabilities. So hopefully India will soon see a lot more emergence of what I call the cloud-enabled factories, asset-light operation models, elasticity in manufacturing, yet creating an ecosystem where everything can thrive. So that's been my learning. I hope you found it good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.